Well, here we are, week number 3 of the coronavirus hiatus. We're pressing on, but we've got quite the show for you tonight here on Tried and True, the DC United postgame podcast presented by Heineken. The whole crew's here.
Yeah.
Sam Kastner, Joshua Morgan, Michael Black.
What
Welcome
even is soccer?
Starting to forget, right?
It's been far too long. But what we did learn this week, and actually earlier today, we have a winner of the DC United jersey bracket that we covered in depth last week, and it was the 98 home kit.
I have a problem with this. What is the difference between the OG kit and that one?
2 stars.
2 stars and a logo? I mean, does that make it a worse jersey that it didn't have 2 stars?
Yes.
Clearly, the fans have spoken, and it does, in fact, make it a worse jersey.
We know we make all our decisions based on what people say on Twitter.
Exactly.
That clearly applies to any poll we ever do.
The original crest was still better, but the 2 stars are preferable to 0.
I love the flags with the old crest on it. I just think it looks so clean. I don't know if I would wear it around because it does have that whole German bad time vibe to it.
Okay.
I was impressed by the run to the final by the 98 away jersey, though. That wasn't really what I was expecting, but I guess it is what it is.
What a comeback from the lads.
Other news this week, the Twitter interactions with our poll showed that not Team Sam, was victorious in what we should do with MLS Cup Finals. So I thought that was
always
notable.
Always. With the home team being seated.
I'm really excited for everyone to expand their worldviews and come around to the correct opinion while they continue listening to us here at Tried and True.
I'm really looking forward to Sam changing her tune when DC United goes on a run. Host MLS Cup come whenever it comes
and
this
it's
year.
in New Jersey.
Fun road trip, y'all. What are you talking about? We'll all be there.
So what have you guys been doing with your week? Anything exciting?
We have completely watched all the way through the English game, right?
Yeah, it was great. I would highly recommend it. It is a mix, we've been saying, between Downton Abbey and soccer, which sounds crazy, but it actually will just please everybody in your household.
Do not model your soccer game on anything that happens in it.
The goalkeeping is literally atrocious. So
I'm pretty sure Bill Hamid would walk out of a showing of the English game. The keepers just stand there and watch it go by.
So Abby and I elected to watch Tiger King before we watched the English game, and you guys, it is fantastic. I mean, we watched all 7 episodes in less than 24 hours.
John is physically animated right now for everyone listening.
It is just wild. I mean, it's the entire show is bananas. You have to watch it.
Is there relationship drama and soccer?
But do you talk about the FA Cup?
So there is relationship drama, but there is definitely not soccer or FA Cup.
Yeah, I'm here for the debate of whether soccer should be professionalized or not.
Is anyone English? Do I get to listen to accents?
I don't believe there's even an English accent.
There's definitely
accents. When you put it behind that backdrop, maybe it's not that great. I don't know. I was entertained.
And suddenly we've changed John's opinion. As we can all see, I can change opinions, and I'm going to bring everyone around to Team Sam.
Just not on
soon.
Twitter.
No.
All right. Well, what else have we been doing?
Well, we definitely got an exciting show coming up today. Griffin Yow is going to be joining us here in about 10 minutes. I'm so excited to talk to him. So if you're listening live, last chance to get questions in using the hashtag Tried and True DCU. It's going to be a great interview. It's coming up here in about 10 minutes. But before then, MLS has extended their training moratorium. As Joshua, everybody knows we're drinking on the show. You can crack the beer within
cracked that Heineken
within sight of the mic. But the training moratorium for Major League Soccer has been extended through April 3rd. So that's not great. And I would be shocked if that doesn't get extended again.
Yeah, I mean, I think on the positive side, that's not super far away. That's literally next Friday. So it could be a lot worse. And I know we're going to talk about this a lot later, but when you look at the fact that the English leagues aren't looking to come back until July, I think that April 3rd is probably an unrealistic expectation of when we're going to be.
They keep pushing it back as little as possible, and they're just going to do it multiple. I mean, it's smarter. I mean, it's not really impacting our lives whether Fred Brillant goes to practice or not. So keep it small so that you can react when it actually it is fine. So at what point do they just test everyone every day before practice?
I think when they get enough tests to make it happen.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I think that would be ideal, and that would allow a lot of sports to continue. But I do feel for Fred a little bit, though. I mean, he told us last week that he's kind of stuck working out in his courtyard right now, which is tough. And I mean, I think the training moratorium is the right decision, obviously, to stop the spread. But it's going to be tough on these players. I mean, I think we're getting into a window now that is going to require almost a full preseason again. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how we eventually ramp up for the season.
That's a part of the players' agreement, is that I think they have to have a month before they play any games, right? They have to have like a month of preseason. So, I mean, essentially, that is what we're going to see. I mean, they're probably not going to be playing a whole lot of scrimmages with other teams. They might be potentially playing with their USL teams or just kind of inter-team scrimmages. But we are going to have to wait longer than just being able to play soccer again. It's going to be an additional month of them training.
And for a team like DC United that is integrating a lot of new pieces, made a few big moves in the offseason, bringing in Gressel, bringing in Flores, I think they could benefit from having additional time on the training ground. They just have to get out there. And I do appreciate the incremental approach to do it, every couple of weeks instead of saying, well, we're not going to start practicing until May. It's tough, and of course we're all eager to get games back out there, but until we get there, that's what we got to do.
Yeah, but once we get there, it's going to be crazy. So I saw the proposal for the Premier League, and I'm sure we'll cover it later in the show, but it's going to be soccer after soccer. We're going to have weekend games followed by midweek games followed by it's just going to be out off the block.
Well, it's actually a really good segue. So as our listeners know, we're live on YouTube. We're now live on Twitter, and the YouTube live chat is a great way to interact with us as well. And we have a fan from the UK wishing us well, hoping we're all well and safe, which we are. Thanks for checking in, and wants to know what's the biggest thing we've missed so far over the past couple weeks without soccer.
Beer showers. I mean, it's why I love this game. There's so much anticipation in soccer, and it's all building up for that special moment when TT bangs in a corner on the full volley and just straight in the net. Right, that's what I miss the most. That's that euphoria.
And you've got this strange world environment because we came in, had first 2 games of DC United season after a long off season, ready to get back at it, but for a soccer fan, there's always a game you can watch somewhere in the world every weekend, and most weekdays too. So to just have no live soccer that we can find, it's been tough. It's been going through withdrawals for sure. Yeah,
we had like a longer off season too, so I think it was really hard because we were all gearing up for it, and it was going to be really exciting. And then we got 2 games in, and personally, I missed one of them because I had to travel for work. So I'm really sad that I'm not. Just watch soccer, man. I just miss soccer. I just miss watching all the soccer. I miss, waking up on a Sunday and just watching all the MLS. I finally picked an English team, go Leeds, and now I can't watch them play. They're about to be promoted, and that might be taken away. And
I saw Gressel tweeted today that he missed waking up to Fox or NBC and watching a Premier League game and or a German game and then getting ready for his game.
Rebecca Lowe did a segment from her kitchen this morning asking folks to tweet their breakfast using #MyPLMornings, and I was just like, oh, this is
Did you
brutal.
have beans and toast?
Yeah, shout out to English breakfasts, man.
Right?
Ian Dark the other day commentating on his own game in the
that was classic.
Unfortunately, it got pulled back by VAR. It was
shocking. But for me, I think what I miss it just having a game, right? I mean, soccer's the one sport where there's always games, and we generally, I mean, I remember being upset and annoyed and sad when we're on an international break because it's like, oh, we gotta watch the international teams. The U.S. is fun to watch sometimes, but then some of these breaks they're not playing competitive games, and we complain about international breaks, but like we've never had an entire
and you can watch great
continental break.
You can watch great replays, and it's amazing. You get to relive the experience. But you know what's going to happen, and that's one of the reasons I love the game of soccer is that the outcome is really up in the air. It's a goal here, a move of magic. It's exciting. It's the reason you keep watching.
Yeah,
and you don't have that with a replay.
No, my friend got me into the Indian League this year, and I was watching the Indian games. It's no matter what quality. I mean, we're used to. Most of us are pretty used to bad quality soccer here as long-time MLS fans.
Hey, it's gotten better.
Yeah,
it gotten a lot
definitely.
better.
It's used to. Like we were through some dark time, but it's just that unknown feeling. I would watch an Indian League game, which they're like MLS 2005 level of competition. It's not great, but it's just exciting to watch those players go out there, and anything can happen anytime.
Have you chosen an Indian League team yet?
Yeah, I have. Bangalore FC is what my friend is. He was a supporter for them. He actually moved here and is now a member of a supporter group for DC United. But actually funny that you asked, Deshaun Brown, a former DC United legend.
Oh, what a shout.
plays for Bangalore, and so I get to watch him play as the number 9 again.
That's awesome.
It's a small world,
This
right?
sport just brings the whole freaking world together. Who would have thought?
The only thing I knew about soccer in India was when we used to play like international in FIFA, and you do the randoms, and you'd get 3 teams, and you weren't terribly excited about any of them, and then so you'd suicide, and you'd land on India, and it was just like, oh, this is an L. It doesn't matter who I'm playing. I cannot win with India.
But don't you do that with the United States as well? And you're like, oh man, I have to take down.
I think the U.S. is like 20 points above India in FIFA. I mean, it's. We'll have to check.
Josh was looking to get red carded at the show today, so if anyone just stops hearing him talk, that's going to be why. Also, I'd like to apologize for my gasp earlier. DC United Kingdom has thrown me some shade saying boo Leeds, which I don't super appreciate.
Sam's been a Leeds fan for at least 72 minutes now. It's
been like a solid several months. Listen, I go all in. I will not claim to have been a fan for forever, but I go all in, and I would like to see us be promoted. We're in first place, 7 points above third, so if they just end the season, I'm fine with it. I'm excited to finally watch the EPL because it was hard for me to get into a team, and I finally have, and then it's taken away from me.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Is anyone still playing soccer somewhere? Like, I heard the Belarusian league was still playing.
Yeah, and this is match week 2 for them, so they went ahead and just kicked off a brand new year. It's wild, and actually I read online that this is the first time they've been able to sell their rights to even other countries in Europe, right? So like Russia, I think Ukraine have bought the rights to show the game because, well, there's something else on.
Yeah.
No one in the U.S. has the rights yet,
So
though. I
the
did
gambling
check.
money is just huge behind those. People are getting really in.
I saw some people were gambling on one of the FIFA tournaments the other day that DC United got in and unfortunately lost like at the last second.
The Quarantine Cup?
That's right.
Yeah, we beat the Orlando Pirates, right, in the international friendly, or EMLS.
No, we lost to them.
Did we? No, we were winning like 3-0.
Yeah, it was a 2-legged final. I think that one ended in a draw actually. But we lost in the Quarantine Cup.
Our guy Mo, right?
Potential future guest.
Yeah, we've got to find a way to integrate FIFA into this show because not having any live soccer to follow is going to be a problem. So.
Right. Yeah, we've seen teams across the league start to like host match days, and instead of the real game that they were supposed to have, they're playing FIFA. We actually on the podcast we're trying to coordinate with some of the other podcasts to have a FIFA tournament that will be streamed on Twitch probably, and we'll have you guys follow along as John attempts to play FIFA.
Yeah, it's going to get ugly, but if you're listening and you're interested in playing, go ahead and shoot the podcast email some information. We'll see how we can get some fans involved. Tried and true DCU at gmail.com is the show inbox. So what we're going to do, we're going to throw it to break here. We've got an awesome PSA from Uganda that we're going to play in our commercial break that at least half of us are excited about. And while that's happening, we'll get Griffin Yow on the horn, and we'll be right back here on Tried and True, the DC United postgame podcast presented by Heineken.
The bad news is that everyone is a potential victim. But the good news is that everyone is a potential solution. Sensitize the masses to sanitize. Keep a social distance and quarantine. Stop!
The coronavirus is sweeping over mankind.
Everybody must be alert. It's a global pandemic we can never take for granted. Kila mtu must be alert. It's a matter of life we can never take for granted. Discipline and personal hygiene, and make sure you regularly wash your hands. Keep a distance from everyone. Report anything like a symptom. Serious fever is a symptom. Dry cough is a symptom. Walkway tamula is a symptom. Itchy eyes and flu is a symptom.
Wikumo butabusiga wejemu batanalwala ulago moyo gwegwanga labira kuyitale abasinga bafudde okuwewala kisingako bujanjaba. The coronavirus is sweeping over mankind.
Everybody must be alert. It's a global pandemic we can never take for granted. Kila mtu must be alert. It's a matter of life we can never take for granted.
The coronavirus is sweeping over mankind.
Everybody must be alert.
This is Tried and True, the DC United postgame podcast presented by Heineken, and we are live now with Griffin Yow, DC United's young phenom and recently a member of the United States Youth National Team. Welcome to the show, Griffin.
Thank you so much for having me on here. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, we appreciate you taking the time. So first things first, how are you and the family holding up right now with the current COVID-19 crisis taking over the planet? You guys doing all right?
You know, it's definitely not the best situation, but, once again, it's in our control and, it's for bigger things, so just kind of grind it out.
Yeah, so that was a great transition. Jumping into one of our questions for you is, what are you kind of doing to stay fit? You mentioned that the trainer is sending around exercises for you all.
Yeah. So they first sent us home with, a paper package for us to, physically look at and work on a little bit, and then they sent the bigger one through an email. And so we actually have a sheet that we set up on each day, how we're feeling, what we're doing, just like normal stuff. And it's just, so they can have a live feed basically of how we are. So they're taking it seriously.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear, Griffin. We have a fan question. What have you been watching through this quarantine? Any good shows you got to recommend?
Yes. Okay. Number one,
Yeah.
that's a great one on Netflix. Cold Case Files on Netflix. Dexter. You can just those are probably my top three.
Sounds like you're watching through a bunch of the older stuff there.
Yeah, I am.
That's awesome. Well, it sounds like you're doing pretty well. You're hanging in there. We're going to kind of transition over to some soccer related questions now. Give the people what they want. So just what has your experience been like playing for a professional team at such a young age?
Yeah, I think for starters, obviously, being put in this environment at, like you said, such a young age has benefited me in so many ways. It's made me mature not only as a soccer player, but as a person, because, you're no longer surrounded by other, 16, 17-year-olds. You're surrounded by, kind of grown men, so you kind of have to mature yourself a little bit so you're not acting like a kid around them. So that side, has definitely helped. And obviously the playing side, being able to practice and play at that level, day in, day out, has made me, just through my first year, I've seen myself progress more than I have throughout my entire career. So I'm super excited to see, what else comes.
Has that been a weird transition, going from attending school every day to doing classes on your own time and fitting yourself into a professional schedule?
Yeah, now I'm a little bit more used to it, but definitely at the start, it was just, it was almost too good to be true, because I was just, waking up on my own time, not really having to wake up too early.
Am I getting that?
But now it's, the work is really coming in, and, everyone else is out of school, and I'm in online, so they're not going to cancel that for any. So we're kind of, grinding through this.
So going to your on the field exploits, you've obviously spent a lot of time playing for the folks down at Loudoun United, and I believe you scored the first goal in Loudoun history. How is that? Does that stick out as a memorable goal for you, or what's been?
Definitely, being able to have that stepping stone, still have that stepping stone as a pathway to when maybe the first team doesn't need me, or I can't get as many minutes as Ben would like me to get at this time in my career. So Loudoun is a super, super great opportunity and option to be able to get minutes at super high level. I love the coach Ryan, I love the guys, the team, and definitely getting that first goal for them and putting us on
on a good note, good first start was, obviously great. So excited to see what this season holds for them as well.
Yeah, we'd love to see you get minutes for them over at Loudon. Also, we'd love to see you get minutes for DC United. Who at DC United has been your biggest mentor or like taking you under their wing?
What was that last one? I couldn't hear you. Sorry.
Who has been your biggest mentor or taking you under their wing at DC United?
Would be, I would say, Paul Ariola for sure. Ever since I signed, probably was when he first started, getting super close with me, and it was pretty easy to talk to him throughout practice because we're obviously both attacking players in the winger area, so we were kind of paired up with a lot of drills. So he was constantly giving me advice, and that just kind of carried on throughout on and off the field, and he's become not only a great teammate but a great friend for sure.
That's awesome. That sounds like a really great fit for you, too, because not only are you playing professionally for DC United, but you've also been getting some call-ups to the U17 national team. What has that been like?
Exactly. Yeah, that's been super good. And like you said, being able to relate on that level as well is super great, too, to talk about with him. But, yeah, the national team call-ups, gotta love those. Just got to keep, grinding throughout this year. Obviously, they're going to put a hold on everything because of this whole COVID-19. So we'll see what happens once, things start to get rolling again. And, like I said, super excited to see.
Yeah, Griffin, have you heard anything from U.S. Soccer about like what this summer might look like? I mean, I know there's some potential competitions at the higher levels for you, obviously, and we've got the U20 stuff starting down the road. Has there been much communication right now?
Yeah. So the U20 is definitely coming up, but there has been no communication. I think they're waiting to make an announcement on, a bunch of things. They have to make an announcement on not only, the Olympics, and then I think, some of the younger age groups also have some tournaments that they were supposed to play. And so, yeah, I think they're just waiting to make an announcement on everything until this whole thing, blows over.
Yeah, speaking of the youth coming up, you seem to be pretty close friends with Kevin Paredes and Moses Nyman. How did you guys first become friends?
Pardon?
You seem to be pretty close friends with Paredes and Nyman. How did you guys first become friends, and what's it like having that friendship in the locker room now?
Yeah, definitely. Having them, I was obviously, after Chris Durkin left, kind of just, chilling there alone for a little while, but it's definitely great to have, Moses and Kevin back in there because not only is it, a bond and a friendship within the team, but it's also, a chemistry and a competitive nature in a way. When we're out there practicing against each other, we're definitely friendly, but in a way we're definitely, looking out for one another and trying to, get in one another's face and, just competitive way get everyone better. And so that's always great, having that energy and having that chemistry and that attitude within the team. That practice definitely is awesome.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, and we're all super excited for the days that the three of you are in the starting 11, and then hopefully that's not too far down the road. But for now, which one of the three of you is best at FIFA?
Ooh, I can't even say me right now. And Kevin is just it's like not even fun to play against him. he's played so much that it's like I don't even enjoy it. Like I won't play against him anymore.
Who's your go-to team on FIFA? Like if it's not DC United, do you play with somebody else regularly, or how do you guys run the games?
I mean, I usually, like I said, I'll play with Paul. Probably he's my usual Paul, Moses, Russ occasionally, those guys, and because those guys are more on my level. I'm definitely behind Kevin, but he's different.
Do you have a favorite team you like to use in FIFA? I mean, obviously DC United, close to the heart, but is there another team that you choose when you hop on the sticks?
Griffin, do we still have it? The question was about which team on the game do you typically play with? Like, if it can't be DC United, is there like an English team or an international team, or who do you go with?
You know what? I gotta be honest. I go with Barcelona every time, just because, you know, if I want to play a real game, I gotta play with guys I know, you know, can perform. And Barcelona is the only team that I know can do that, you know, every game. So that's just my standard right there. That's my team.
You just absolutely gutted John, who has spent some time in Madrid and is a Real fan. But you're right, you can't always count on Real to come through for you.
It's okay, Griffin. We can still be friends.
Definitely.
So it sounds like you are just kind of surrounded by soccer. Looking at the U.S. soccer website, it looks like your family is all full of soccer players also. So we wanted to know, are you the best athlete in your team, in your family, and would they all agree?
You know, I mean, just off of competitive nature, I obviously have to say I'm the best athlete in the family. But for sure they would have different opinions, and it's awesome having, you know, like I said, that competitive nature in the family growing up with, you know, my brother, probably most prevalent because he was closer to my age, and also my sister was kind of off doing her own thing with, you know, her own college stuff. And so me and my brother would always, you know, be like playing, just getting each other better, you know, practice on and off the field. And it was just, I think without that, I definitely would not be as far along as I am today, for sure.
That's awesome to hear, man. So we've been told that you're a kind of a sneakerhead. Do you have and we saw the pictures of you with the Adidas boot. Those look great. Do you have a specific favorite brand for casual shoes? What's your favorite pair right now?
I mean, honestly, I'm just gonna have to stick with, you know, the regular Adidas, just because, you know, that's just the three stripes forever. That's just that's the best right there. And specifically in Adidas, if you look them up, they're the Raf Simmons. Definitely people on DC United will know what they're talking about. They're a little bit, they're half pink, and then the other half is like this chrome, and it's super shiny. It's definitely you either love them or hate them. The guys on DC United definitely tell me if they either love them or hate them.
What is it in the locker room? Do more people love them? Do more people hate them?
You know what? I gotta say, probably more people hate them.
Oh no!
you know, just because, you know, Chris Seitz, Steve, those guys are just kind of like, you know.
Oh, they're dads at this moment, right?
They're just hating on my style. So,
that's when you tell them that you'll teach their kids.
More hip guys, you know, like Fish and you know, guys like that, Bill will know that, you know, they like that type of sneaker. So it's all right.
We might have to bring you on later in the season for you to give us the definitive rankings of how hip all your teammates are. But, you know, maybe you got to sort that out in the locker room first.
Definitely, I would be super down for that. Definitely.
It sounds like you're coming out on top right now, though. So maybe you just need to rank everyone else.
So Griffin, we got like two more questions for you. One thing I'm very interested to hear, you know, looking longer term for you. We've talked a bit about, you know, future with DC United. We've talked a bit about the future with the national team. But what are some of your like long-term goals or aspirations?
Yeah, definitely. I think for sure. I mean, I obviously have the goal to, you know, be the best I can at soccer, which is, you know, win the Champions League, whether that's get to a World Cup, you know, just push myself to my maximum limit until I am definitely satisfied. And then even after that, I know for sure that I'll want to be surrounded by something that has to do with soccer, whether that's, you know, coaching or, you know, something along the lines of that, just because, you know, I've been surrounded by it all in my life. So it's just, I kind of just got to continue it.
Well, that's awesome. You know, it's great that you have thought that out so thoroughly, and I think I can speak for all DC United fans that we always have a special place in our hearts for those homegrown players. So we really do want to see you continue to improve and see even more minutes on the pitch for DC United. So our last question for you, I recently won a contest and got a DC United jersey, and John's looking to purchase one as well, and we'd love your 30-second elevator pitch on why we should put your name on the back of that jersey.
Oh my gosh, I would love that. Okay, so I think that you should put, let me think here.
We'll cue up the Jeopardy music.
Is it because you have the most promise? You're the most hip in the locker room, apparently?
Yeah, it already
That's
sounds
sneakers.
like there's a lot going in your direction. Absolutely.
I think, yes, I think you should put my name on the back of that jersey because I know it would make Chris Seitz and Steve and that whole gang so upset.
I think you have me sold.
And just to see that in the morning when I arrive at Audi Field after this coronavirus break is just gonna make everything so much better.
That's awesome. We got to get it done before we get Burn Bomb on the show, and we'll all wear those.
I like
so
it,
hopefully
yeah.
we'll be doing live shows again, and we'll just be lined up with Yow kits.
Yep.
I love it.
Awesome. Well, Griffin, thank you so much for taking the time to join us, and we hope hopefully we get to the other side of the coronavirus fun here soon. But stay healthy, and we look forward to talking to you on the show again. Hopefully live from the stadium next time.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'd love to be back on here soon. Thank you guys so much for having me. Again, it was a blast. Thank you.
Not a problem. That's DC United's Griffin Yow joining us on the show. We're going to send it to break, and we'll be right back to talk about all the other things going on in the world of soccer. So keep here on Tried and True, the DC United postgame podcast presented by Heineken.
Sounds great. Thank you.
The DC United postgame podcast presented by Heineken. We'll be back in less than 2 minutes.
Can't listen to us live on YouTube? Find Tried and True, the DC United postgame podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, YouTube, or Pocket Casts the morning after the match.
Tried and True, the DC United postgame podcast presented by Heineken. We'll be back in less than 90 seconds.
Hey, thanks for listening live. If you want to join the conversation, let us know what you think in real time using the chat on YouTube Live, on Twitter using the hashtag TriedAndTrueDCU, or text us at 202-892-6328.
Tried and True, the DC United postgame podcast presented by Heineken. We'll be back in less than 60 seconds.
Let us know what you think between games on Twitter at hashtag TriedAndTrueDCU or email us at triedandtruedcu@gmail.com.
Tried and True, the DC United postgame podcast presented by Heineken. We'll be back in less than 30 seconds.
Hey, thanks for listening. If you like what you hear, go ahead and give us a follow on social media. You can find us on Instagram or Twitter at TriedAndTrueDCU. Again, that's Instagram or Twitter at TriedAndTrueDCU.
And we're back on Tried and True, the DC United postgame podcast presented by Heineken. Just wrapping up a great interview there with Griffin Yow. And a thank you to all the folks listening, both on YouTube Live and on Twitter. Apologize for the technical difficulties we had at the beginning of the interview with Griffin, but I believe we got it fixed not too long in. So we'll share a little bit on Twitter some of the answers Griffin shared with us while the audio was down there. We do apologize for that. But we're back, and we've got some interesting news out of England related to the coronavirus. It seems like the Premier League has come to an agreement with, at least behind closed doors, with the government, as Joshua cracks yet another beer, to potentially finish the season beginning in July. And it would be all games behind closed doors over a 4 to 6 week period, but they would get it done. And the goal there would be to start again in August. One, I'd like your guys' thoughts, but two, I mean, it's so interesting to me to hear these plans because we don't really know what's going to happen.
So I think I had obviously heard from you looking at the show notes that they were looking to do this, but I don't think I had realized that those would all be behind closed doors. They're kind of assuming that we're still going to be in this pandemic, and they're just trying to get the games played.
Yeah, I mean that's essentially it. And they did say that things could change if the situation gets better or if it gets worse. Maybe they don't do it at all. But that's kind of the initial plan, and that's not until July, which is interesting because Major League Soccer is saying May right now is when they hope to get back. It seems to be that the UK and the US are in a similar timeline, but looking at countries like Spain and Italy, who are probably a little bit ahead of us, they haven't announced anything. I believe they're both indefinitely suspended, and so it's just to me it's interesting to see contingency planning kind of live here.
Yeah, it's weird. I will say the difference between MLS and the English game is that MLS really needs people in the stands for these games. I don't know how I feel about closed games. For you want to win the title as Liverpool in front of no one?
Yeah, and we heard last week from our guest Fred Briant talking about he wants to be there with fans, and I think that's a sentiment that's shared by a lot of players. You play the games; it's an entertainment product, but part of that is being in front of people. It will change it significantly if they end up going closed doors, even if they take precautions before you get there and what have you. It's a tough sell.
Yeah, well, I think part of it too is Liverpool, I think everyone can agree, has kind of run away with it. And I was reading an article about that ESPN put out about is there really a need to play out the rest of the season because 90+% of the all the decisions that need to be made being that the spots in the other tournaments and the title winners, and looking down at the championship, the people being promoted, 90% of that is historically already been decided. There's not a whole lot of ebb and flow between these spots, so it's kind of if the season did have to end right now, what would change, just kind of trying to make it a little lighter, but also then you always have that asterisk on your title for this year.
It's a
right?
formality, but there will always be the asterisk that you didn't play the full.
Exactly. I wasn't advocating for that. I was just putting it out there that you're saying that maybe Liverpool doesn't want to win the cup, and raise it to an empty stadium, but I think they'd probably prefer to do that than to have that asterisk that the season wasn't finished that year.
I agree, and if you were to cut it off at some point, obviously Liverpool being far and away going to be the champions this year, that's fine at the top, but when you talk about the teams in the relegation zone, it's a very hard thing to tell them, oh yeah, you thought you had another 6-8 games to pull yourself up and have that major payoff from being in the Premier League, and by the way, you don't get that.
And there is one team that I can think of in recent memory that was in last place at this point in the season and did stay up. Leicester City the year before they won the title, right? So it's hard for me. I mean, I'll put my bias on the table. We're in a Champions League spot right now, so if they wrap the season, freeze the table, hand it out, I'm happy, right? And I think Sam's happy with Leeds getting promoted. I think Joshua...
We're at 6, right outside, so no.
Well, but Man City being ineligible, you're there. You're at least in Europa, right?
No, yeah, Europa again.
So Joshua's a Wolves
and Newcastle
fan.
not going down, so...
Yeah.
I think
Newcastle fan.
I think we'd all take it. But it's so hard. And we've already seen just this week... the English FA has decided to expunge the results for all of the divisions below the National League and National League North and South. So there's already a couple lawsuits brewing there for teams that were going to get promoted into those leagues. That's pretty far down the pyramid. But on the women's side, the same is applied to the Super League and the Championship there, and they've said that there's going to be no promotion and relegation. And so there's discussions continuing regarding what's going to happen for the National League, and then of course the EFL and Premier League, and then the Women's Championship. But this is an interesting precedent that's being set at the lower levels, and it sucks. But I don't know if there's a better way.
I know. I think it's really interesting to talk about as a fan of American sports, too, is because we don't have promotion and relegation. So when you think about it, if I was okay, if we had, what do they have, 9 games left in their season? So I'm okay, if that were to be called in MLS and then the Supporters Shield just stands, it feels like there's a lot I don't know how I would feel about that also, because then would you play the MLS Cup? It's difficult to think about the comparison.
And you regularly have teams that go on big runs at the back half of the MLS season.
Because that's what matters.
That's Seattle's patented move. That's DC United 2 years ago being in basically last place before.
It's DC United this year, too. Just it hasn't happened yet.
Hey, DC United's got to win under the belts. It's a much better situation to be in than we were playing away for the first half of the year 2-3 years ago, right?
I also have to give the shout to DC United social media
I was just
on
gonna say
Twitter
that.
for that Miami posted this gif of probably the only time in the game that Fred Briant was roasted a little bit. Yeah, he misstepped a little bit, so they were practicing social distancing, and Shouts to whoever is doing the DC United Twitter right now, because they posted a screenshot of the
table.
Table, thank you, and of Miami, and said, "Oh, are you social distancing from that win column as well?" So you just love to see it.
Yeah, getting back to the whole cancellation of the league. I mean, the Patriots went 17-0 that year, right? And they were basically crowned champions, and then they did not win the Super Bowl, right?
One of John's other teams took them down. The Giants, baby.
The Giants ended up beating. So in that situation, if the season had ended before the playoffs for the NFL, the Patriots would have won a title, wrongfully so, right?
Because that's why it's so different when you talk about playoffs.
That's why you play the game,
right? I mean, we have playoffs in soccer too.
Yeah, absolutely.
In our league here in the U.S. and in the EFL with League One. I mean,
and maybe it's easier to finish a tournament like the FA Cup where you've got a couple of rounds left, but they're usually one-off games, instead of trying to fit in an entire third of the season, quarter of the season.
Well, that's kind of like what do you I mean, we talked about this last time, but what would you prioritize in a little bit of a different way? Are you finishing the season, or are you like ending to be able to play those tournaments? Hash this out, but
speaking of hashing. I had to take the segue. If you've got thoughts and you're still listening to us live, or of course in the middle of the week, you can interact with us using the hashtag TriedandTrueDCU. Love to know, what do you think they should do, both in England and here in the U.S. Right? I mean, we talked a lot last week about what we could do, but would love your thoughts on how do you sort this.
Well, that's what I mean. If we're still not playing in July and August, like it's less traumatic, I think, for MLS to scrap the season with the 2 games played than it would be for like the English leagues to scrap their season when they're over halfway done. And it's kind of like when you're playing an actual soccer game, if there's storms out there and then you see lightning. If you see lightning prior to halftime, then you just replay the game. But if you see lightning after halftime, the game stands. And it sucks if you're in like the 47th minute and the game gets called, but it's over halfway.
And if this game's at the Maryland Soccerplex, the alarm will go off very, very loud, and the lightning's probably in like Texas, but it thinks it's close, and so the game's canceled.
So I'm just saying, like, I think it'd be a lot less traumatic in MLS, but this brings up another point that a lot of people are talking about, are contracts and what that means for players. Because if your contract is up over the summer or in the next couple months, or even at the end of the season, like, if you're not playing, say they have to scrap the season and we just continue in 2021, like, is everyone who was off contract, especially potentially like some of those older players who would go to free agency with the new CBA, like, what does that mean for them? Would they stay with their team for another year?
And you talk about the international transfer market. A lot of teams try to make big moves during that summer window. That's generally the most active window. The window in the U.S. to add players closes the 5th of May and doesn't reopen until much later in the year. Was it 7th of July? So at that point, you may not even know who's finishing, who's staying up in English leagues or other leagues across Europe.
Yeah, and I mean, you also don't know what type of form people are in. Like, so many players sign such big contracts because of the form that they're in. So do you just assume that they're coming back in the form that they were off? You got to assume that everyone's going to have a little bit of a drop off. Are people going to be re-energized by this? It also really helps the players who were injured. If they were looking for moves, they get a little bit more time.
Paul is coming back, I hope.
He's on a bike already.
I know.
Okay, so it's gonna be like he just missed the first 2 games.
But it's interesting to your earlier point.
He had
about
a red card anyway, so we were good.
Yeah, I think you still got to serve that.
Yeah. No.
We'll
you have
figure
to be
that
on
out.
the bit. Oh, I guess
I think you got to
be
be eligible. Maybe they'll bring it back a week early and say he's eligible. Man, whatever.
Right? Yeah. How do you play those?
I'm not
rules?
encouraging that, DC United, but we got to do what we got to do here. But no, I was gonna say, a couple weeks ago we talked about some signings that DC United were looking to make.
I've already
Bobby
got
Wood.
Derek Williams on my FIFA career mode. Like, he's playing center back.
But how do you, you got to bring players in for physicals, right? And that's something that the NFL is struggling with right now in free agency. They've halted kind of the ability to do that in most cases. But when you're talking international, I mean, guys in France, guys in Germany, coming overseas just to do a physical. I mean, that can't happen.
You can't even make the travel.
Right.
No.
Yeah, no. I think Tua Tagovailoa from the University of Alabama, instead of his combine, just recorded a video of him doing workouts. So maybe that's what teams will be. We'll get a workout video from Derek Williams of him like heading a ball away from goal or something. I don't know.
That's part of it, though, is that you're like DC United's med staff is the one doing it. You can't necessarily. I mean, I hope no one's doing this, but you can't necessarily trust the other team's med staff, because if they kind of like go over
Timbers
something.
had a little trouble with that.
I will say that you have to expect that Dave Casper and the team over there at DC United are spending a lot of time working from home, watching tape of people from around the world, trying to identify additional targets for either this summer or moving forward. It's an opportunity to play a little catch up, and with the resources we're working with, that's a good thing.
Maybe a little catch up on getting Lucho back to DC United, in form.
I think that ship sailed.
Oh, maybe.
Wow, you gave up on that one real quick, Josh.
I hate to break it to you, but I think that ship sailed.
Look, I just miss 2017, 2018 Lucho.
We all do.
We
all do. But then we witnessed 2019 Lucho, and we kind of let it drop.
We didn't witness much in the second half of the season, but I guess that's the point, right?
Right.
So I'll tell you guys, the most interesting article I read this week, and I spent the entire week teleworking, and so there's a lot of articles kind of being read in the background of conference calls, but this is fascinating to me. The Atalanta-Valencia game in the Champions League, which, by the way, was a massive game for Atalanta. It was the furthest they've gone in the Champions League.
They look really good this year, too.
They do, and they ended up winning the two-legged fixture, and so, in theory, they'll be playing, what are we going to be, in the round of the quarterfinals next, I think?
That's about right.
But doctors and researchers are calling that game that was in Italy match zero, because they're attributing that to a lot of the infections and the spread of the coronavirus within Italy, and then also back in Spain when fans and the team went back to Valencia. There's like 5 players on Valencia that are infected, and one of the things that is most fascinating to me is Atalanta's home stadium was not deemed up to standards for UEFA, and so they've been playing all of their games actually at the San Siro where Inter Milan play, and so it was kind of like it wasn't even their home ground, but it's just become this big talking point now. It's a fascinating article. I'll tweet it out. But I just can't imagine like the excitement behind that team and where they're going. And then 1, everything's frozen. 2, they're an Italian team, and they're obviously in one of the worst spots in the world right now with the coronavirus. And then to look back and people are like, we think that game was a really, really bad idea. That game that was like the biggest game in the history of your team, that one.
Well, it definitely makes you appreciate the moves by public health officials and those in authority to say, hey, we need to put limits on our gathering size. We need to make sure that people are following these public health guidelines, and it's something you just have to do. And while we're gonna be sitting here hoping that we get onto soccer sooner rather than later, but I think we all appreciate the need to. And you respect that.
Yeah, and I think it kind of goes back to how our team's going to bounce back after this. If you were on a really good form, and I think a lot of that is how probably teams are handling it while we're in this hiatus. So, Griffin Yow, I apologize, I don't remember if this was before or after we got the audio working, but he mentioned that the training staff kind of sent everyone home with a packet of workouts to do, and they've since emailed out a larger packet, and they're checking in with players and seeing how it's going. And I know Fred Briant last week said it was hard to be working out at home, but at least something is being, given to players by the team, and they're making the effort to keep everybody in shape and keep everybody going. They're not just having players sit back. Bielsa for Leeds is having his players literally weigh themselves every morning and send that into the team. Wow. He's trying to go as business as usual as possible, and a lot of them have been like putting out on Instagram videos of their workouts and everything like that. So I think that those are the teams, that's the mentality you have to have, right? Is that you're just going business as usual until you can get back out on the field.
I love the idea of these professional athletes having homework packets.
Well, one of the things that I wonder is, we're in this era now, and we've seen it over the last couple of years in Major League Soccer, and DC United really stepped into it when they moved to Audi Field, but just all of the biometrics and all of the tracking during games, during practice, that they collect all of that data about players to know who's the most fit, who's struggling, maybe they don't look like it, but their body needs rest. I can't really imagine that any of that data is being collected very well right now. I mean, I think that's generally sensors in the site.
I doubt they're wearing the little catapult sports bra.
They're sports bras. I was just about to say, do they take those home with them? Have they since been mailed home? I don't know.
Have they been washed?
Yeah, I doubt they're wearing those around the house. And I've seen from the We Are LAFC documentary that they had players peeing in cups every single day to check hydration. I mean, I doubt their hydration becomes a factor at this point because we're so far away from a game being played. But
that goes back to does it become a factor? Like LAFC, I mean, they are like all in all the time and they want to win every single game. No loss is acceptable. So are they trying to maintain that mentality as much as possible? They're not saying this is a break. They're saying we're professionals. This is still during our season and we are going to continue working to the best of our ability. Obviously, like they can't pee in a cup at home. What are they going to do with it? But like, are they maintaining as much as they can?
So you're saying that the winners of MLS Cup this year are coronavirus champs, right? Because they came out of this.
That's actually etched onto the trophy this year. You are a coronavirus champ.
Right. I guess it does come down to how do you handle this crisis and how do you come out of it? If DC United come out and win, like they come out a completely different team, it'll probably be noted that they had this huge break and then they developed underneath it and came out strong.
And frankly, I think they need to. You know, we saw some sloppy play in the first game, and you kind of expect that. And you know, you saw a team that got down against Inter Miami early and really could have been out of that game, but for some fortuitous VAR decisions. And you know, we all know how that turned out with a victory for DC United. You know, I think we need to see this team continue to grow and find a way to get through this forced absence and come out stronger.
Yeah, I've been trying to rewatch the games for like a tactical understanding of what was going on and see specific players, but they just didn't play well in those first two games, and it makes it really hard to watch. One of them was on 2DN, so it's not as accessible as like an ESPN video, but like they weren't pretty games. I watched the first like half of the Colorado games, and we were losing for like the first 15 minutes. It was really hard to watch. I hope they come out of this break raring to go. I mean, we've gotten to talk to a couple players, and they seem super excited. Brilliant, and Yow hopefully gets on the pitch and tear it up.
I think there's something to be said for, they're coming off of two not great performances. So that's definitely got to be eating at them a little bit. But they did also come off of a win, so they know that like even when they don't play well, they can get there. But I feel like they've got something to prove. In talking to both Fred and Griffin now a little bit, I think that this team feels like they've got something to prove, and now hopefully we have the chance to see it.
Well, I think that part of it too is that, sorry Black, but the team, I mean, like, I love DC United with my whole heart, and I have for many years now, but like the ethos of our team is not playing pretty soccer in the way that like LA Galaxy plays pretty soccer. Like DC United has always at our core been a team to like grind it out and get those results, and it's the people who are going to work super hard. It's those workhorse players that are like the heartbeat of this team. So I think that it's two different conversations. I mean, we came out with that win like because we were grinding really hard. So is that just like a mentality we're going to bring through? I don't think we're going to change the entire mentality of how we play in this break.
Who do you think brings that mentality to this club?
Paul Arriola.
No. Like from a decision-making standpoint, why is DC United a gritty team? Is it because of the financial standpoint of this club through the past few years? Or is it because of Ben Olsen and Dave Casper? That's who they are.
Ben Olsen was a gritty player. Yeah. He was a gritty player, and he stuck those tackles hard. I mean, even at the beginning part of his coaching, like it was take a shot every time he gets a card as a coach. Like he used to get carded out of games all the time because he lives that like gritty, like fight for everything. And when he wasn't doing it like as a player, he's doing it as a coach. And I think that that's the way he expects his team to play, and you see it. But
I've seen us in recent years with that little bit of money coming. We played bad soccer for a long time because we had one of the worst budgets in MLS, right?
Sure. So RFK was taking all the money away, right?
I feel like we saw some pretty soccer at times last year. Even in the beginning of last season, before we decided to bunker every game and have shutouts galore, which are great, by the way. But before that, before Lucho disappeared, which I'll recognize, we tried to play pretty soccer. Just Wayne Rooney was nowhere to be found. Lucho was not in the same form.
It took you 5-6 games until you played NYCFC and LAFC in back-to-back weeks and realized that DC United probably was not a top of the table kind of team. But you're never going to expect the Ben Olsen team is not going to have the grit and be willing to put in the work.
I love grit. I think it can coexist with flair and pretty soccer.
You're right.
And I don't think Ben has ruled that out. I think he defaults to the grit, to the Perry Kitchen, to the Davy Arnaud, just fouling and winning games 1-0 with one shot through the whole game. But I feel like when this team eventually gets firing, because eventually while Ben Olsen is the coach, because he's not going to never be not the coach, when he gets that working, I think it'll be a pretty team with gritting. Don't call out my double, triple negatives.
we were trying to do the math on that. Like where
Everyone in the room is trying to figure out what
Ben
you just
Olsen
said.
are never not. Yeah.
One day we'll have a
think
different coach.
One day, no, I don't think so. One day, Ben Olsen will be able to have Gritty and Flair on the same team, and I think
It's gonna
it'll
be a sight to
beautiful.
behold.
And
It's
I
going to
don't-
be Moreno and Canals destroying people, and Flores and whoever striker just bagging goals.
Yeah, and I
and then
don't-
we'll win the cup, and I'll just retire.
And I think we're trying to find, I think everything you just said is leading up to this. I think that we're trying to find those pretty pieces. You know, we're finally having money put into the team. You know, the ownership came out while we were fighting for a stadium in DC and said, we're not spending money on players while we're waiting for a stadium in DC. They flat out said that. Like, we all had to just kind of sit through having a shoestring budget. And, you know, in that time, we also signed Paul and Russell. Like, we were making like decent moves. We weren't making the top-notch moves like Wayne Rooney like we all wanted. So now that piece is starting to come together, and I think that while we're getting the grit together, you know, we can watch pretty soccer. We can play pretty soccer. I think we default to the grit. But you're right, you do see those like games and moments of magic.
And let's just hope we get to see some kind of soccer soon. I'm going crazy here.
Yeah. You mentioned one game in there that like it was awful, the LAFC game, but I look back fondly on it for two reasons. One, it was the first game that my parents came to at the new stadium, right? So that was a lot of fun. But do you guys remember the Fox crew just rolling up to the Screaming Eagles
Yes.
tailgate on a raft? I mean, that was ridiculous.
I met Stuart Holden, and I'm still like, I can't even
It
talk
was
about it.
incredible. They'll never make a better entrance than that. I'll throw down the gauntlet right now at Alexi Lalas. It's not going to happen.
But we also, I mean, played like the Seattle game last season was probably our best game, and we played beautiful soccer during that game. So I think it's there. We're still trying to find it, and I think that that's okay.
Yeah. Hopefully it'll be soon. So before we wrap the show, any last Sam, you wanted to talk about something.
I have a very specific thing to talk about, and there are a lot of people in the room trying to be really humble right now as Joshua takes his headphones off. But we have two models in the room right now. So if you haven't seen it, Joshua and John were in some pretty fancy photos. If you go to our Instagram, you look at our story, you can see them. They're floating around Twitter. I think Joshua has fully embraced it. You can see it in his
Some people have
profile
said
photo.
I've rivaled Landon Donovan's water fountain pick, and I think that's.
I think
We might have to
Yeah.
bring in Pablo Maurer to see if he can break down our photo shoot.
I mean, it's pretty solid. It brings a lot of sass. It brings a lot of, Joshua representing the old school celebration of kissing the crest because we just love DC United that much. John is, showing the style he's got, the attitude he's got. He's in it to win it.
Well, I was going to say, what is that attitude?
He's in it to win it. You're here for DC United.
Oh,
You're
that picture
tried
was
and
true Ben Olsen grit right there. Ready to...
I'm the Flair, and you're the grit that I was talking about. Hopefully, we can coexist together on DC United.
I love it. So I just needed to point out those photos because I think that is a joy that everybody needs to have within their life right now as they're doing nothing else. You can go to club11mag.com and you can scroll down a little bit. You can see it right there. It'll
And
be
what was that Instagram handle?
our Instagram handle is tried and true DCU. That's at tried and true DCU. You can see it if you're listening live. You can see it on our story right now. If you're not, you can go to, again, that's club11mag.com. It was within the story they did about the Screaming Eagles. You can see a little bit from the Screaming Eagles president, James Lambert, and then you can also just see those awesome pictures. And I want everyone to remember this moment right now. This is the first of their portfolio when they skyrocket and really elevate, the team and our podcast and everything like that.
This bit
It started
is
here.
just been run into the ground.
This will also be Sam's final podcast. I'll tell you though,
It will not be the final time I talk about it. Let's be super clear about that.
It was a fun interview. Great guys from Club 11 Mag. And looking at this picture again, it's hilarious. I looked pissed off hours before the Miami game even started, which apparently is my vibe. So we're gonna call it a show. Thank you guys, everyone, for listening to us live. Thanks to Griffin Yow for coming on the show. My last question for you guys is: do we even need to ask? Are you just gonna buy Griffin's jersey, or should we continue to ask players? Because I was pretty sold.
I was so sold on that.
I'm gonna end up with way too many jerseys.
Oh my God, yeah, I think I might just go bankrupt. I will not have a home, but I will have every player's jersey. Let me tell you that.
I think we're gonna have to call up Devin, Paul, and Fred and ask them for their 30-second pitch, because Griffin set the bar high.
He really did. That was such a convincing argument. I mean, the whole interview was already an argument, and that final answer really sold it for me.
Yeah, so that's it for this week. We'll be back next week to talk more coronavirus hiatus, and hopefully we'll have some better news on where the seasons are heading around the world. But in the meantime, please give us a follow if you haven't yet at Tried and True DCU on both Twitter and Instagram. If you're listening to us on the podcast, throw us a like, throw us a high rating, and leave some comments, Sam.
Yeah, and let us know what you want to hear us talk about. Engage with us, have the conversation with us, but let us know what you think our next episode should be like. Let us know what guest you want to hear from next week. DC United has been super great, I think, especially with us, but with all of the different DC United podcasts about really making the players accessible in this hiatus time. So if there's someone specific that you'd like to hear us talk to, let us know.
For sure. And in the meantime, we're going to send you out with our favorite public service announcement about the coronavirus here as everyone takes off their headset. But I can't wait to hear Bobby Wine send us to break. So thanks again. That's the show. Until next time, Vamos United.
The bad news is that everyone is a potential victim. But the good news is that everyone is a potential solution. Sensitize the masses to sanitize. Keep a social distance and quarantine.
Coronavirus is sweeping over mankind.
Everybody must be alert. It's a global pandemic we can never take for granted. Kila mtu must be alert. It's a matter of life we can never take for granted. Discipline and personal hygiene, and make sure you regularly wash your hands. Keep a distance from everyone. Report anything like a symptom. Serious fever is a symptom. Dry cough is a symptom. Walkway tamula is a symptom. Itchy eyes and flu is a symptom.
Abasinga bafudde okuwewala kisingako bujjanjaba. The coronavirus is sweeping over mankind.
Everybody must be alert. It's a global pandemic we can never take for granted.
Obulwadde bwa corona temubuzanyisa bange.
Kila mtu must be alert. It's a matter of life we can never take for granted.
Coronavirus is sweeping over mankind.
Everybody must be alert.